All right, welcome everyone. Just a quick reminder, we do read the feedback for all the talks, so please go back and sketch as you go to talks and give us feedback on the talks, and that helps us make selections for future events. So with that,
yeah, you might have to be a little more hands-on.
If we have time for questions at the end, we'll do it, but with that,
folks are kind of
everyone's going to introduce themselves.
Everyone hear me?
Lab?
Okay, hello. Welcome to the panel. This is a panel on what's essential in an open source software project launch playbook. So the first team to introduce themselves, we'll start with Ronan. I would talk, sir.
Hello? Yes, there we go. Okay. Hi, thanks for coming. I'm Ronan Flynn-Curran, so I work at Microsoft. Part of our open source team, kind of Go Ideas Labs. We produce a bunch of things from like CNAB, Helm, Brigade, some of these projects you might be familiar with. And I work as a designer, software engineer, sort of strange hybrid person. Basically, when there's a project launching, we have a bunch of stuff to do. I work to try and help it look nice and appealing, and help with things like docs and branding. So, hello.
Hi, I'm Betty Junod. I'm currently VP of Marketing at Solo.io. And previously I ran product marketing and partner marketing over at Docker.
Hi,
I don't have audio in here.
Alibaba. So our team
I'm not getting audio.
is split into two parts. So we sell Kubernetes service on Alibaba Cloud, and also our team supports our Alibaba ecosystem on top of Kubernetes-based infrastructures. And my personally, I work on Kubernetes internals, and previously I worked at Hortonworks, a company working on mostly hyper-related stuff.
So you got a community manager, a designer, a marketing person, an engineer, which means I'm the manager. So I'm Matt Butcher. I lead the team that does Helm and Brigade and other container native open source projects at Microsoft. Ronan and I work closely together, and Karen and I also work closely together.
Hi, I'm Karen. I am the community manager for Matt's team and then some, and I joined Microsoft.
He doesn't know this. We need to get the guy
I
who
handle
knows
all
this
of our
stuff.
community efforts for the upstream Kubernetes. Yeah, so we're going to go and
The old guy.
approach this panel in two parts. So the first part, we're going to talk a bit about purpose and direction, and then the second part will be more around like execution and implementation. So we collectively felt like this was the natural flow in which we have approached starting new projects from our own experiences. And so with purpose and direction, let's first start with goals. When you are first building your project, it often starts with identifying a problem and creating your prototype to your problem. So what are things you start to think about after the initial code?
Well, I think in preparing for this panel, we talked a lot about this, and it's really about who are you bringing on board, and that's kind of thinking about that when you build it. So like, who are you pitching, and then thinking about what you want them to do with it. Being an open source, there's like a lot of us that have worked at companies that have open source things that they've been finding out early, as well as if you're building it because you want to get people playing with a certain technology, and building around it, or did you want, is it something that you build internally that you use for your own service, like folks like a Netflix, Facebook, those folks, they don't plan to commercialize it. Does your company plan to commercialize it, or is this something that you've done on your own? And what you want is like, I built this cool thing and it solved the problem, and I just want other people like me who have this kind of do this kind of work to go use it.
Yeah, that's all good points. And I think some of the different teams will operate differently in this way because, for example, our team, part of our mandate is to make sure that what we're putting out is high quality open source software. Whereas I think teams where you might be doing some parts open and other parts maybe not, or building a hosted service and wanting to open source the parts of that hosting service, those things will drive you in different directions. But I think the general rule that we probably all follow as teams would be that one of the first questions we ask when we're evaluating, so we got this POC and it works great. We got this proof of concept and it works great. Does it fit in well with the long-term vision that all the rest of our things are after?
Yeah, so from my personal experience, so I work at Hortonworks. It's a company purely based on open source, and I now work at Alibaba. So it's not a purely open source company. So it mostly leverages open source to
texted
create
Don now,
So
there's no way I'm
I
gonna
think
be able
there's
to
some difference between these
he's probably
two categories or more categories of company that. So like in Alibaba, we sometimes do open source project. We mostly we open source what we open source what we ship. So we ship what we use, and we use what we ship. So we recently open source a project called OpenKruise. That's the extension of the Kubernetes controller. That's actually very broadly used in our internal infrastructure. So we think that the community can benefit from it. So we open source it. But in my previous company, so the company itself is completely based on the open source. So the revenue is based on it. I think there will be very different distinctions from this perspective.
One small thing that too I feel like is interesting when often when the project can start from like the engineering building something themselves, using it themselves, scratching their own itch, and then finding it useful and wanting to publish it and bring it out to the world. You often enter this interesting conversation where it's what is this, what does it do? And because it's often so much founded in your own little problem-solving niche for your team, it's kind of a very strange moment to put it out there. What do you call it? How do we describe it to other people who are maybe in a different scenario? We'll get into some of that later, but that least thing is an interesting time where you have to kind of like reframe it for the external world.
Yeah, this can be very different if you're, a lot of organizations now are seeing more like open source offices where they be at, we're all working at software companies. We build software for a living, that's what our companies do, but there's other companies that, they build a service for an end user, customer, and then they end up open sourcing components of that because they built something really cool that works for their internal service, and then they release that out there. You'll see sometimes they'll form an open source office so that they have a practice around how they open source their core components, or software vendors like us, where we open source things and that's part of like how we build new software that some is commercialized, some is not. So I think it's going through thinking about who it's for and what the purpose is really helps you kind of set a mindset for like, what do you want it to be? And then it'll actually dictate a lot of other things we'll talk about.
I would say that one thing that we have learned well is that the goal should not be to have X number of users or X amount of market penetration, or whatever words you want to use like that. Because what we've found consistently, both in our own endeavors and in working with other teams, is that oftentimes that ends up being so much of a distraction that you lose sight of what the problem is you're actually trying to solve because you're always chasing customers instead of trying to diligently solve a problem.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about culture. And I think we kind of decided that culture, at least to us, was like the spirit of how you expect people will participate in your project and your community, right? So I'd like to discuss different angles to culture. What can culture mean within the context of open source?
Culture, I think, so for companies like purely based on open source, the culture in the company, the company itself is a small community. So like in my previous company, we completely, 70% of my time is writing code in open source. The company itself is a community. So I would say, first define the culture, is the culture for the company or the culture for the community? So probably the company is a smaller community and the community is a larger community. Culture, I mean, open source is about collaboration, right? The difference is that in a company that for open source, you can resolve many discrepancies in a small setting. And you can talk with the guys sitting next to you and resolve the discrepancies and so on. You don't have to sort of fighting in the GitHub or whatever. So you just talk with him and resolve discrepancies. And most of the time, we post our results, whatever the outcome is on GitHub or some form. But in community, the culture is like sometimes people from different zones, different areas, like people from China, European, so they have very different cultural background. So sometimes people are not speaking native English, so they probably, I mean, sometimes I would say maybe simple English is better because people sometimes don't understand, and sometimes they kind of, because they have different cultural background, and then you may be unnecessarily causing some offending result, so that kind of thing. So I think it's also because people from different time zones and asynchronous communication is very important in this setting, that you have to clearly express your thoughts in an asynchronous form so that people from different areas can listen to it and express their thoughts afterward.
A really good point about tone does not come across the text. Right.
Yeah, I think we've been, on my team, I think we're very intentional about trying to create a particular kind of culture. Early on when we were doing Helm, and we started the Slack channel, one of the things we decided was, we use this metaphor to describe it. When we were first starting to build the project, we were all like working in a circle where we were all facing inward toward each other, very much like what Jian was saying, talk to each other very closely and say, okay, I'm gonna get this feature spiked out, I'm gonna work on this, and we were constantly communicating to each other. But at some point, we hit the release milestone, actually it was the first KubeCon, and our perspective changed. And the way we described it was, we had all been facing inward toward each other, now it was time to kind of turn around and face out toward the community. It was kind of an interesting little metaphor, because in a way you get the I got your back kind of thing, right? Because we're in a circle, and everybody's there helping everybody else get stuff done. But we start talking to other people. Here's how we use it, here's what we like about it. Sure, I'm more than willing to jump in and spend a half hour debugging with you. And so then you get this concentric ring around you of other people that are facing toward it. And we said, okay, we want to be intentional about building a culture not just that has that part, but where that concentric ring also starts turning around and helping the people outside of them. And we built kind of an onion-y kind of model. And so we talked a lot about some of the different things we wanted to have in order to make that work. We want to be friendly in chat. We want to invite people into conversations even when they feel like the question may be dumb. We want to encourage people to open PRs, and we then try to put things like that into practice as a way of shaping the culture.
Good. And one small thing to add about tone, what you were saying is be friendly, and I think like trying to maintain permanent sort of like optimism is like really important when you're talking on like an issue or something. Anyone who's coming in and engaging and communicating is like yourself often like volunteering, donating their time to something they think is interesting. And I think it's always like really important to be very open and thankful for everyone who's posting an issue.
That's video.
Reviewing PRs and so forth. So yeah, that friendliness I think is such a big deal, and something we always try and do every small thing we do. Because technology can be very opinionated.
Well, actually, for the folks that are kind of kicking off the project, like the creators and the people kind of getting the community going for asynchronous communication, because that's because there's no tone that comes out. You cannot see that person's face. You don't hear how their voice is. Enforcing kind of a welcoming culture would be like some rules around how to communicate, just so that everybody, regardless of your capacity on English, that it is very like everyone can equally participate. So saying that, hey, when you make a comment on something, instead of just saying this sucks, or not good enough, or I don't know what you mean, being very specific, using very simple terms, because if we can't get our point across simply, then maybe we need to work a little more on kind of
Just find the guy, find the old guy.
But then being very specific and clear so that it actually is actionable for maybe
Instead
the person
of
who...
like you trying to figure their system out, they know what it is. I would just find him.
Just open up system
without
preferences
specific
real
action,
quick.
and then it's only going to cause that friction, and then you have some unhealthy things happen in that project.
Yeah, that I think there's two things I want to say on that one, because but it is very easy to let other people start to influence your culture and not realize that you're getting into that responsive mode when somebody's snarky to you and you're like, and you respond back on the issue here and you think, I probably shouldn't have said that in public. But one of the things we found useful to help us control that is to say, to remind each other, when people file issues, it's usually because they are already at frustration level, right? They've already come in and gone, I can't figure this out. I spent 4 hours on it. I'm mad. And if you can do that, then then you get a little more sympathetic, and your first reaction is, okay, so was the issue this thing in here? Instead of saying, look, if you don't like my project, just go away, which is what we wanted to say a lot of times.
So companies, so I think one beauty of open source is that it is open source, it's open-minded. So like even companies have competition with each other, they still work on the same project, like CloudNativeCon, Hotbox. These are examples. Now they merge into a single company. Previously, there are two companies, the employees for different companies, they're working on the same line of code, but from company's perspective, they're actually competitors. I think so. This open source thing actually unites people from, from a tech perspective that we can work on the same team. But still, I mean, there are fights. I mean, still, we can't say we don't have fights in this area, but. Most of the time, like if we have these services from two companies, we mostly, because it's all in Bay Area mostly, and we make a video conference calls, and sometimes we even meet in person. And so I think still person-to-person communication is better than writing unresponsive comments on behalf. Sometimes, yeah, you have to talk with people in person and see how it works in a personal way.
Yeah, actually, there's one last point, and like, you brought up a really good point. Like, two companies are actually competitors, but they're working on the same project. When you look at, your new thing that you want to invent open source and thinking about who it's for and what it's for, knowing that like how you want, what you want to happen with that project, who you want to use it and participate, will dictate like how you're going to interact with people in many ways in your community. And then thinking about, is it something that's sponsored by your company, and will it have like the same identity as your company, or is it going to be kind of managed separately? And so that will also kind of dictate like maybe some of the rules around how people interact, what the culture will feel like.
So, I mean, we assume that people have good intentions. Are there any tips that any of you can give for when things get toxic, or just, yeah?
The number one proactive step I think that you can make to help you deal with toxic people. When we say toxic people, I think we're all kind of thinking the people who come in and cause dissension, name call, are intentionally trying to derail conversations, or who are just belligerent in their demands from you, right? So one example, I had somebody show up in a queue one time and said, I will only use your project if you do this for me by May 2nd. And it's like, okay, but it's not really, I think I just closed that issue, I didn't know. But other ones are the kind of people who are going to come in and name call or deride other people. The worst, in some of the worst cases, it's when one person in your community picks on another person in your community. Number one defensive step you can take against that is don't publish anything until you've got your code of conduct, and put the code of conduct out with your code on release, because that gives you a document you can fall back on. And don't write your own, just borrow one of the, there's a site that has.
There's a CNCF one.
Yeah, CNCF has one. There's a site where you can pick and choose things. Yeah.
Cool. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I think it's important to respond quickly when things come up, and then also making sure that the maintainers and kind of like the main public faces of the project be very involved in saying like, hey, let's, without, again, if there's someone who starts without publicly attacking them, because you don't want to perpetuate that if that person is already agitated. But saying like, hey, let's take this, we'll take this offline, or hey, why don't we rephrase that? And then also having a side conversation with them, in that at the end, it is like, again, it's people having like Jian said, like that one-to-one
There are some people who are like, oh, I did not know it came off that way. Because they hear it in their minds and they type it, but then again, the tone doesn't come across, what have you. If it's straight up name calling, you can just say like, we don't talk to people like that in this project. And it's okay to be public about that.
Yeah, that's a really, the making connections one-on-one with people, especially for the really mild stuff, is often very good. One of my favorite stories is early on in one of our communities. We had a user drop into Slack and say, hey, I'm having a problem with this thing, I can't figure it out. And someone else in the Slack channel jumped on immediately and said, if you just read the documentation, you would have seen that it's over here. And we kind of pulled that person aside and said, you know, we're trying to create a Slack channel that's open and inviting to people, and I think you came across as aggressive and made them feel really stupid. And you know, we prefer to not do things that way. So a month or two goes by, and we're watching the Slack channel, and a new user drops in and says, hey, I'm having this problem, I can't figure out how to do X. And somebody else from the community jumps on them and says, well, it's in the manual if you just read it. And the guy that we had talked to the first time jumped into the conversation and said, we're trying to create a Slack channel that's open and inviting to all people. We don't want anybody. And that, like, what a moment of victory for me. You know, it's like, yes, oh, yes, you know. And that person has went on for months and months to be a great asset to the community, kept answering questions. And all it took was just one quick side conversation. He hadn't realized how he was coming across. And as soon as he did, he was like, I'm going to be the person who champions this piece of software. And it was great.
Cool. So the purpose of deciding your culture is to set guidelines for the people you want involved. Sounds like the next thing to think about is like a level up, right? Governance. So how can one strike a balance between utilizing the vision of a project with allowing the community to share the responsibilities of growing the project?
And I think some of that is also going back a little bit on the purpose, like who are you building for? Do you intend for it to be donated? Or is it something that we built, or is it something that like you as an organization has built the software and you just want to open source pieces of it so that it's openly available and you want end users to participate in it? I think having that would actually probably direct your governance, how you think about governance very differently. And I mean, do you want to comment if you've donated things?
Yeah, I think even, I'm going to get fired for saying this, but you know, at Microsoft we have different cultures that show up, and oh, there's my manager back there in the back. Now I'm so distracted. No, you know, we have different cultures as a company. It's a huge company, and we have different mindsets when we go into open source projects. So there are some open source projects at Microsoft where one of the driving questions is how do we continue to convey Microsoft's commitment in this particular line to do this particular stuff at this particular quality. And their goal is to be Microsoft ambassadors in the sense that they're going to control that open source project from day one till, you know, infinity and beyond. There are other groups, my group, it tends to be more on this side, where a lot of what we develop is designed to be moved into a full community community managed mode, right? We want to build things that are donated to CNCF. We create rules in our governance documents that say things like no more than 49% can be from any one company so that no one company officially controls this project. There are two different modes of approaching the problem, and neither one is inherently better than the other. But it transforms the way you handle governance if your intention is to become community governed or organizationally governed or stay with your company and be a company governed project.
Sorry, just a couple of small things on that. Like I think doing that governance out in the open as much as possible, I think is a big deal too. You know, often the projects we're running will do developer calls that are accessible to anyone. It's not a closed team, and you're making sure that, you know, once you have maintainers coming in and wanting to contribute to your project, you try and identify people who are, you know, helpful and engaged and actually like, you know, taking the initiative and doing things like saying nice things to other people in Slack. Say, oh great, this is positive. Like, can we get you, you know, can we make people maintainers and kind of elevate them and try and like share the load, and also then make sure that we're distributing in a way that it's not all one company, it's not all one agenda. And in terms of doing that stuff in the open too, often we can plan features, plan releases in terms of issues out in the open, so it's all there on GitHub. Someone can come in and add, you know, their thoughts that they would like to see this pushed in a release, so forth. And And another thing too about this in the open, I think, is actually like naming is a big deal. It's a kind of an evocative thing. But if you're putting something out and you're putting it out under your company name, people sometimes expect that then this is your company release. It's not necessarily open source. So sometimes if we feel like it's relevant, we'll try and, we want this to live outside of our company and really have legs. We'll create an org, something separate where it can actually, we know from the start we want this to be its own community and to be governed independently and away from some of the complications of being associated with like the mega company and just trying to do it out in the open and separate and boxed off to some degree.
Yeah, and I think after kind of like, what is it now, 5 years of CNCF, and kind of seeing all the projects come out through the years, there's a lot of examples to look back on. And then, we have the luxury now of all the things that have happened throughout time to just see like, where do you want it to be? And it also doesn't mean that once you launch it, as it evolves, you may not, it's not like the only way you can do it, based on, because you don't know how things are going to get adopted when it starts. But we're able to kind of look at that now. There are models, there are many different models that we can look at.
Yeah, so to add on, so I think it's pretty important to have individual contributors in the community, in the sense, so I worked on like two sides of the world. So in my previous company, so we are the key player in the Hadoop community. So we run Hadoop projects. So it's usually, I would say, it's very easy to work in the community because the guy who's sitting next to you can commit your code. You can just talk to him, whatever. You can resolve very quickly. However, so for most of the companies, so it's participants. So you contribute to like Kubernetes, we contribute, but there's still some key players there. So it's not as easy as you work in a company who's really running the project. So I say, but I think it's still very important to have individual contributors to come in, chime in, and show their use cases. So like in my previous company, so we are very happy to have individual newcomers to come in and share their experiences. But so sometimes newcomers they are intimidated because they are not familiar with the line of code. They're just afraid to make mistakes. But from the maintainer's point of view, at least for me, I was also a maintainer in Hadoop. So I'm very happy to see that people even come in with a very small or just stock fix to show their presence. It's a problem for the, I would say, for the community and also for maintainers. I think, most of the time, so early on, I wrote code a lot of time, but later on, I review code most of the time. So I'm happy. Most of the maintainers review code happily, and sometimes reviewing code is even more time consuming than write the code by yourself. So yeah, I would say, I think most maintainers are still very happy to help the individual newcomers to grow in the community. Yeah.
So once you figure out your purpose and direction, the next thing you might have to think about is how you actually go about executing the project. So let's jump into communication and so it sounds like there's one-way communication, which is outward, and then there's also the other direction, which is how you take in information, right? So in terms of like outward information, like how important is branding for open source, or like how do you tie communication and branding for open source together?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. So a lot of what I do is branding open source projects, and it's an interesting area because I think we see open source projects being shipped now with a lot more polish and a lot more sort of like personality kind of groundwork than potentially would have years ago when things were different. And I think really what branding is just a way of differentiation at this point, because you want to just have something there that looks somewhat polished so that someone will trust that your project isn't some flash in the pan thing that's going to be around for 2 weeks and disappear. It's established enough that people put time into it, and then you're respecting your users' time, saying that this is something we actually want to have as a complete package and for people to engage with. I think really branding open source is a way of just putting your flag up and saying we're here, we're ready to be used and to have people come and contribute to it. And I think tone is a big part of, a very special part of open source, because you have an opportunity to do something unusual, I think, in open source compared to often like a commercial product where it's often company to company, and open source often is concerned in, I feel like, in a more individualistic place with contributors, and people are saying, I'm interested in this problem, I want to put time and effort into this, and then you get support and you get more people involved. The individualistic thing, I think, allows you to speak to people in a language that often is a bit less corporate, a bit more direct to the technology and the stuff that's there, and all that tone, I think, can be a big part of the brand, to basically do something that makes you stand out, that can have a bit of personality, and putting some time into having something to put out there, some nice docs, building a little presence so that people see that this project is interesting and want to engage with it. I don't think branding in open source has to be a little bit per se, it's just basically taking some time to polish your message and present things in a fun and engaging way.
See? We're actually running out of time. I want to just touch on infrastructure really quick. Really quick, what are some things that you should think about for infrastructure from the very beginning? Are there any tips, any bad horror stories, things you want to leave our audience with?
We don't have enough time for all my bad stories, which is good for me and bad for you. Number one, you want to plan for optimistic growth, but not overly optimistic growth, because that combines like 4 things that I wanted to say in one. Make sure that you're not picking things where you're on the free tier, but tomorrow you're not going to be on the free tier, because that gets very disruptive if you have to switch from one to another. But also at the same time, don't over-optimistically assume you'll be at 1 million downloads in a year and plan for that as your first case, and then end up paying very large bills for things you don't need.
Just quit all the
Yeah, that's one of the things we had
before your
talked
session.
about, based on how you want the reach of your community, and making sure that the tools that you use are accessible across all across the different countries. Things like Google Docs, where that may seem like super prevalent for all of us here in the States, is not accessible in certain countries. Maybe there's a newfangled video conferencing, but it's only hosted here, things like that, just to make it accessible to everyone, and then documenting and then publishing so that people asynchronously can read, and then how do they then provide comments and questions back in?
Yeah, and make sure, contributing to open source takes your time, so make sure you talk with the employers that you are devoting the time to the project. So one example for me, in my previous experience, so the difference from me with other contributors is that the company is paying me to work on open source, versus other people are actually working on open source projects on their own spending time. So you have to make sure that companies is investing on this.
All right, I think that's all we have time for. If you have questions, you can find us outside. Please do the survey, and thank you for coming to our panel.
Thank you.